Good morning, and thank you for joining us for another edition of Coffee with Tom and Joanne. I'm Joanne Taranto.
And I'm Tom Matthews. And today we're going to talk about the value of hiring Joanne and I, as where we bring a partnership level experience to the real estate process. And particularly this is geared towards sellers and talking about pricing, how Joanne and I price a house. We were just talking about a 1700s farmhouse that we were asked to look at and going through our unique processes. So Joanne, why don't you tell people a little bit about what you do and how you come up with value?
Well, so what I usually start with is gathering all of the public information that I can get about the property. So I'll go and pull the deed from the Registry of Deeds online, and I'll get the assessor's card from the town website. If there's a GIS map available, I will get a screenshot of that so that I know what the land looks like. And that's kind of the basis of where I start. And of course, this is assuming I've done a walkthrough of the property before this, because doing something sight unseen is very difficult. So, I start with the public information. I reconcile whether or not I think there are any errors with it, because sometimes there's a 2-car garage, but the property card from the town says that there's no garage. Or there's air conditioning or not air conditioning. Those kind of facts I like to double check before I start kind of really diving deep into things. And I think the most important thing that I do is I don't pull what I feel are comparable properties. I look at properties that I think are relevant. And by relevant, I mean, if any buyer was in the market and looking at homes, what would they be looking at? And for the particular property that we were just talking about, the antique farmhouse, sometimes you even have to go outside the parameters of the town to really understand what the appreciation in the market is for a property of that type. So I start really, really high level with market trends and then sort of dialing it down into the town that we're in and the location that the house is in. And that's how I pull relevant sales, because the market is very fluid, and buyers right now, they're not necessarily married to living in one town. There was a point in time where somebody would say, I only want to live in Concord. But right now the market is very competitive. So we're finding that buyers are saying, I would want to live in Concord, Carlisle, Sudbury, or Wayland. And they've got a few different towns to choose from so that they have some inventory to look at first, and then they can get to know each community as we get to know each other. So when I'm looking for a seller is I want to know when that house goes on the market, looking back at past sales of and current homes that are on the market, if there are any. And I want to create a scenario where I pretend that they're competing against each other on the market. And I pull all of the relevant data from the MLS and from the public records to try to compare different aspects. So Tom, when you're looking at different aspects of the home, what are some of the features of the property that you feel are important to be comparable, like in a spreadsheet format?
Yeah, if I'm looking at a spreadsheet format, I want to look at when the property was built. Year built's really important at times, and other times it doesn't matter. Then I want to look at the land, because as we get out in the suburban marketplace, one of the things that Joanne and I look at is price per square foot. But the only way to make that work is to make sure that we're comparing properties of like kind lot sizes. Recently Joanne and I were asked to price a property that had 6 acres. And we were trying to come up with data points. And so we did a spreadsheet and we looked at properties that only had 3 acres or more. And it was fascinating looking at how that data came out when you looked at properties with acreage to see whether or not that impacted the buyer's willingness to purchase the property for a premium. And what the data was saying was that in this particular market, buyers were willing to pay more money for a bigger house on a smaller piece of land because they didn't want to pay the taxes on the land. They didn't want to have to take care of the land. And, oftentimes what Joanne and I find, I'm just going to talk about land for a minute, people that bought homes 20 years ago when assessed values were low, land values were low, it seemed like life was a little slower. People wanted the land because they wanted the privacy and they loved taking care of it. This one guy we met with, his driveway must have been 700 feet long. And he was telling us how much enjoyment he got out of plowing it. And Joanne and I were like, oh my God, that would be like a nightmare to have to spend our entire day plowing the driveway.
Or an entire day mowing a lawn.
Mowing a lawn, right.
Big. It's the same thing. And I think that there is a generational shift in the value of those things, without a doubt.
Yeah.
And, so we look at lot size, house size, obviously square footage. We look at how much square footage is finished in a lower level, if that's applicable, the number of garage bays. And then we get into, bedrooms, bathrooms, number of rooms. And then, we also look at the timing of when those sales happened.
Yeah.
So early in the year, like we are now, we generally will look at a 12-month window. But as you get later on in the year, you can narrow that down to the most recent 6 months. But you really want to take a look at the meat of the market of what happened in the year prior when you're trying to predict a future market.
And looking if depending on what time of year it is, like right now, there aren't a lot of pending sales. But if we're in June, Joanne and I might be looking at pending sales to see if the trend is looking different, because markets change. Right now, we're in a fast acceleration market, and so there's a lot that goes into it. But one of the things, as we talk about our processes, and obviously, if you want to go deeper in our processes, you can call us. But one of the things we wanted to just kind of convey on our coffee today is that when you work with Joanne and I, you're getting two full-time realtors who are doing independent market analyses, then talking about them together prior to you getting the report from us. And Joanne and I, we talk about, we don't just look at Zillow like consumers do. We don't just do computer algorithms, which just spit out numbers. Like, we download data, we look at that data, and then we talk about the condition of your home. Because the home we're looking at right now, the condition of the home is not in great shape. And so that makes a really hard discussion on what the current value is. And we just wanted to share that with our audience of how we go through our process, because, if you're going to call on the Tom and Joanne team to have them into your home, we want you to have a little understanding of our process before we get to your front door.
Yep.
So, thank you for tuning in for Coffee with Tom and Joanne. I'm Tom Matthews.
And I'm Joanne Taranto. Cheers.